All right. I think that probably gives it enough time for letting everybody jump into the meeting, which, wow, I don't know that we've had quite this many people before. It's pretty awesome turnout, and particularly on a short notice, and putting the pressure on Alex and Mark and Elizabeth perhaps, but I know we've got some pretty exciting and some really good presentations set up. So my name's Lachlan. I'm part of the Bluebeam committee, and we'll just go through a bit of housekeeping stuff to kick us off. But just firstly, just want to say a massive thank you and welcome to everybody coming along. We've got some really good speakers lined up today to sort of come and share. If this is your first time at MelBUG, or maybe you're a returning person and you've been here a few times, I'll do a quick overview of just a few housekeeping details, and then we can get stuck into the fun stuff. So I think we're all getting pretty familiar with doing meetings on Teams nowadays, but yes, if you could just sort of keep yourself on mute for the while the presenters are presenting. And with the chat function, just encourage you to, if you've got any questions, chuck them in the chat as we go. And I think what we'll do is, after both presenters have gone, then we'll facilitate a few questions out of the chat, and it might be an opportunity there for anybody to sort of, if they're feeling brave enough, to come off mute and ask some questions as well if you like. So just put those into the chat, and then we can address those at the end of both of the speakers finishing. Have about 15 minutes for that. So I was just mentioning before, so we've got Alex Butcher from Advanced Spatial Technologies going to give us a bit of a rundown today on comparing documents in Revu, so using the compare function. So Alex comes with a lot of expertise from believe they provide some training and stuff around Bluebeam, among many other things. So that will be quite good for getting us into sort of maybe learning a few new tricks around the comparing documents. And then following that, we've got Mark Anderson and Elizabeth Oliver, who are from Anchored Height Safety. And I'm really looking forward to this one as well. I think they've got some quite interesting workflow there of using Bluebeam Studio, but also using the new Bluebeam app for iPad. So they've got a bit of a recording. They're going to show us what that looks like using that out on site. So I think that one will also be a good one. I can see if Mark's on the call here, but I think hopefully he is. So what is MelBUG? These bugs, don't need to call the exterminator, it's the Bluebeam user groups. They exist all over the world, and really they're not part of Bluebeam, but they are supported by Bluebeam in the background. But effectively it's a forum for people to come together, and it's not about selling Bluebeam, it's just about sharing experiences between users and opportunity to see what some other people are doing out there in the industry. And so they do exist all over the world. There formerly was one in Sydney, which no longer exists. And I believe if anybody was able to come to our first Q1 session earlier in the year, that we were talking there about whether we try and sort of expand this from being more of a Melbourne-based bug to more of an Australia-wide one. And it looks like, from the amount of people who have dialed in today, that perhaps we're seeing a few people from different regions around Australia join in. So maybe there needs to be a rebranding at some point about the naming of it if we go down that path. But there are a number of other bugs that exist around the world, and there is a YouTube channel for these other presentations that are going on. So it can be a great repository of going on to the YouTube and the LinkedIn sites to actually see what's happening in New York and London, and there's and all over in many different places. So my name's Lachlan Ramsey. I'm a structural engineer at ACOM as part of the Buildings and Places team, and the MelBUG committee has been going for about 3 or 4 years, and Ben May who's also from ACOM, and myself and Shannock Halliday, who is now at Bluebeam, all form part of that committee. And we've had some other members across the past. Sing Sing from CPB was with us to begin with. It's a really rewarding kind of venture. It's something that allows you to get into contact with other users and other people, and we're always on, and it's actually fairly low input in terms of like being able to keep it running. The main challenge that we have is trying to find new speakers and people who are willing to come and share. So, but if it's something that really interests you, we are looking for more people to be involved in that. And like I said, it is actually quite rewarding and actually relatively like easy to sort of be a part of this committee if you would like to do that. So that's enough of the general stuff. Let's get into the exciting stuff. So I'm going to get Alex to share his screen shortly, but Alex Butcher, he's a technical sales manager at Advanced Spatial. And as I was mentioning, he's going to give us a bit of a rundown on comparing documents in Revu. And maybe now might be a good time, Alex, if you want to share your screen and get into it.
Cool. Well, thanks, Lachlan. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome. Thanks, Lachlan. Hey, everyone. So, yeah, my name's Alex. I'll just share my screen. I'm the technical sales manager at AST. I've been working with Bluebeam for just over 4 years now. So I run trainings, demonstrations, and everything like that. With everything to do with Bluebeam, I wanted to just present a little bit on comparison today and how you can use the functions within Bluebeam to compare documents effectively and get a really cool output from it as well. So we have two different comparison functions within Bluebeam that you can use. So under document, you've got compare documents, you've got overlay pages. So you can use them two separately, depending on sort of what you want to achieve. You can use them separately. You can also use them together, which is what I want to show you guys today, and creating a cool workflow using them together and customizing an output of what you can get from it as well. So the first thing we're going to do, we've got two revised files here. You can do this in batches as well. I'm just going to do it with single documents for today for the purpose of time. But you can do this across a very large set of documents as well if you have that. We've just got two files here. One is a revised file of the other, a few changes in it that have sort of happened across the revisions. Some are really easy to see, some are not. So the first thing we're going to do is overlay these two together. So if we go to document, we can go to overlay pages. Pretty simple. It picks up the document you're looking at if you've got them both open in red and green. Red will be the first document, which will be the one you're looking at. Green will be the second one, which will be the one you're not looking at usually. You can add more files to this. This isn't just limited to 2 files. For the case of doing revisions, generally we're only going to have 2 files when we're doing this. And you can use the align points if you've got 2 files that are out of line, so the content's moved on the page, got different size pages, that kind of thing. You can use the align points. It'll ask you to pick 3 points of the content on each one to manually align them. So usually you would pick the corner points of the document if you have that. You can edit defaults in here as well. You can change the colors of what they are. Generally, when you're doing comparison, we recommend to leave it as red and green. Reason is unless you're colorblind, obviously, and can't see them, the red and green, when they go on top of each other, they go black. The red and green are very easy to distinguish. If you change the green to something like blue, when the red and blue go on top of each other, they go purple, and the blue and purple can be quite difficult to distinguish between. So it just makes it nice and easy to see your changes when you do this. It's okay, relatively quick process. It basically will just drop one in one layer, one in another layer, and put them on top of each other. You'll see everything that's the same as black, anything that's taken away as red, and anything that's added as green. So you can see in here pretty clearly we've got some rooms that were added, a few doors and things like that. A wall has been moved. All of these section markers and everything like that have been taken away in the revision, and this building's sort of been extended out the side here. So it's nice, really cool, visual, easy way to see your changes, picks them up really easily. We can also turn on and off the layers, so you can see just the second one again, just the first one, and switch it between how you want to, like that. So going one step further, where this becomes really cool and a bit more of an advanced workflow. Being able to visually see these is great, but let's say we want to report on these changes. How are we going to do that? We're going to go through and highlight them all manually, put clouds around them, mark them up, what they are, generate a report. We could do that, but there is a really easy way of doing it and automating that workflow. So what we can do is save this overlay file. So I'm just going to go in and save this one here. here. Cool. Obviously, you would label it as what it is. For my case, I'm just going to leave it out what it is. I'm going to close down the revised file. I'm just going to leave open the original document and the overlay file. Whenever you're doing comparison, generally, it's really easy to just have the documents you're using to overlay and compare open. You can do it without them open. You just add them in after, just picks them up automatically if you've got them open. And so I'll go into my original file again, and this time we're going to do the compare documents. So we go to document and compare documents. So for this one, there's a little bit more we can do with this. So it's going to pick up as document A, the original file, which is the one I'm looking at, the same as what it did with overlay, and document B as that overlay file. We can choose where we're going to output this to. So I'm going to output this to the same folder that I've been using, which is this one here. Again, I can manually align them if the content's out of line. In this case, they're not, so we'll just leave it as there is. If we go into advanced here, we can change some of the output settings. So basically what the compare documents, if you haven't seen it and haven't used it before, what it's going to do is it's going to go and put a cloud around everything that's changed, highlight it with a little fill color that is opaque so you can see what's actually changed as well. By default, it's in red. So yeah, and it's just going to basically output a separate document with all those clouds around it. The top part up here kind of messes with the sensitivity of how sensitive it's going to be when it does the comparison. Sometimes you do a compare documents and it picks up the whole thing as a change. Generally, it means like a line slightly thinner or something like that. So you can mess around with this a little bit to change sort of how it picks up the comparison. One thing that I did some testing with and have found it quite useful is the color sensitivity. If you bring this down a little bit further, it's not quite so sensitive on things like very small, minute changes in the color, things like this text in the title block it would pick up if I didn't change that. And this auto alignment function as well, it seems to just auto match things if they're slightly out as well. It's a little bit just to play around with and test with your own documents. This is sort of, it's very document based as to how well it will work for you as well. You can do things like include markups, and yeah, by default, what it's going to do is it's going to apply the clouded version to document B. So you can see things that were added clouded, things that might have been taken away clouded. You can change which ones it's going to do it to. You can do it to both documents or just one. I'm just going to do the new copy of document B as it is by default. And this is going to save it. The other thing as well is it's going to lock the markups by default. For my example, and I would recommend doing this if you want to get the output of it, is to unlock the markups because we're going to do a bit of manipulation with them once we output it. Once all that's going to save those settings as well. You can always go back to default if you need to. You hit OK, and then I'm going to go OK again. So now, as you can see, what it does is it picks up all these changes. The sensitivity's gone a little bit crazy today, so it's actually not picked up too many things as well as it should. So I'm going to close that down. Let's try that again with a little bit less of the color sensitivity. You can see sort of how that actually changes things. Let's go and compare documents again. Bring up that sensitivity. Let's bring that up a little bit to where it was. OK, and OK again. And you'll see the clouds have now gone a bit bigger and actually picked up the changes a bit better. So the reason it brings them up next to each other, if you just do a comparison by itself, what you would usually see is the things that were clouded, and they'd have empty clouds and you wouldn't really be able to see what was actually taken away. So it brings it up next to each other and it synchronizes the zoom. So you'd actually be able to see, okay, that flag was taken away. Then the things that were added, you see, okay, there's a door added there, the wall is now missing, for example. Because we've done the overlay first though, we can see anything that's clouded that's red was something that was taken away, and anything that was clouded that was something that was green is something that was added. So we can actually just close down this file now and just look at our overlay and compare file as one as a whole. The cool thing about using the compare functions is everything that's gone in here is a markup. So we've got them tracked in the markups list, and this is where the output becomes really cool. So we can turn off some of these columns. Let's just get rid of these ones. And I'm just going to put the comments column on there. So I can now go through this and put some comments against what these actually are. So I can double click into my comments here and say some rows were added here, or walls added, or something like that. imagine you guys are going to go into a lot more depth than what I'm going to say here, but we'll say a door was added here. Section marker remove. You could also delete off things that are unnecessary. So for example, sometimes if I put that color sensitivity a bit further up, it picks up things like this date change down here because it's got a little bit different numbers. It picks up things in the title block that I don't really need to know that are a change. You could just delete those off. Like for example, I can just get rid of that one. Having the markups unlocked by default when you do that output makes that a lot easier. You don't have to go through and unlock them first. So once you've gone through and put all your comments in, obviously I'm not going to do that right now because it's going to take forever. I can go into the summary here. We can do a markup summary of this. So if we go to a PDF summary, and we can append and hyperlink it to the current PDF. So it's just going to append it to the bottom of this overlay file. You can create templates to put these markup summaries on. I'm just going to use the default setting for today. You can either do a table or a flow style. Generally for this purpose, you want it as a flow style. And hit OK. Basically, it's just going to produce a report of all these changes so that we can go through and have a look at them. We could, obviously, if we've got all of our comments, we could send this to someone, say these are all the things that have changed, for example. Let's just go through. If we go to one down here, you can see all of my comments are up here that I've added in here. All of these little thumbnail images of the changes are hyperlinked to where they are in the drawing. As you can see, it's just in the thumbnails. It's appended onto the bottom of that file. I can go through things. Where's one so that door was added there. Click that, it takes me there. I can use the previous view or next view to go back to my report if I want to scroll through it more and go through it like that. So yeah, that's just a little bit about the comparison using the two functions together. I think it becomes a really powerful workflow with comparing documents and finding changes within there. If you use the comparisons together, if you use them on their own, they're great tools, but combining them just makes them a lot better. I'll leave it there. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think I have an application for this workflow that I need to use this afternoon, Alex. So perfect.
Great. Love that.
I'm just thinking about this task that I have to do this afternoon. I'm like, actually, that would do it. That'd be good.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's a good presentation. You got some good feedback there.
Thanks, Shanok. Someone asked, is this on YouTube? I think I do have a video of this on YouTube. Let me see if I can find it.
I've got a couple of questions that I'll maybe ask you at the end, Alex, but perhaps what we'll do is we'll get Mark and Elizabeth on, and I can get people to have a little bit of a think and chuck some stuff in the chat as well. And then at the end, we'll do a bit of a longer session and we can ask a few of those things and get into it a bit.
That's good.
So quickly share my screen back. So Mark Anderson is the Managing Director at Anchored Heights Safety, and Elizabeth Oliver works as a documentation manager. They've been using a really interesting workflow, partially using Studio and then also to go out to site and actually when they're checking off anchors and height-related safety items at site and being able to determine whether they've passed a test or failed a test. So they're going to share a bit of their experience now, and really looking forward to seeing what they've done with it, because I think this is quite a unique one. It's actually a good example of how Bluebeam can be used in all sorts of different functions and ways. So Mark, I can't see that you're on the call, but I hope you are.
Okay. Mark in before.
Yeah, I'm here. Good. I'm here. Can you hear me, Shanok?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ramsey? Okay. Fantastic. Are we loud and clear so you can hear us clearly?
Yes. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Feel free to share your screen if you want to.
Okay, then. So I'm going to try not jump around too much, but there will be a couple of jumping in and out of a PowerPoint slide and also a live presentation. Okay, so Elizabeth and myself, part of the team here at Anchored Height Safety. I'll just show you who we are to give you a bit of context, and then we'll go through what we're doing. So what we do is as opposed to a lot of Bluebeam users, ours is we recertify, inspect, install, and recertify height safety equipment. And as part of that, we see documentation as a very important component and a very important part of what our end client sees. They don't actually see an anchor, they see the documentation of the anchor, for example. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a little bit of a demonstration of what we do and what Elizabeth does before the documents and the drawings get uploaded, so we can go and edit in the field. We've prepared a short video of a screen grab of us doing a recertification. And then we'll have a look at what that looks like when we get back to the office. So we've tried to consider it from an end-to-end perspective. And I suppose just for context as well, all of our installers and field technicians, they use an iPad mini. We've found that the newer iPad mini is necessary. Some of the older ones we've currently got, we're phasing out. They just don't have the grunt that's required, particularly when we end up with a lot more photos and a lot more documents on it. So we are trying to sort of working at the limitations of what the tablets are able to do. But I think we've found a pretty good mix.
Yeah, I think I'll perhaps add that we started doing this in November, so we're still very much in the sort of startup phase and exploring what works and what doesn't work and adapting and learning as we go.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing that for a moment, and let's have a look at my screen. In particular, let's have a look at. Okay, so for those of you not aware of Studio, I think we're not going to go into the details of how to set up and how all Studio works, but what I will show you is something that we've got a demo that we've created. This is actually a pretty cool functionality. For those that do use Studio, enables you to also compare, similar to what we just looked at a minute ago, but it's side to side, and as you move around in one file, it moves the other file. It's pretty good functionality, but not useful for what we're doing today. Okay, so this is a file Elizabeth prepared for us, the roof of our premises we're at. Some of the cool functionality, this is a screenshot straight out of
New maps.
And so we can easily scale this, which is important for what we do. So now I've got scales on the drawing, and we can very easily measure, although that appears to be a little bit out, but because I scaled it incorrectly. One moment. There we go, and it's adjusted it. So before submitting this to our field technicians, Elizabeth will check it out so we can modify it locally. We've got a series of anchors series of our own icons that we've developed, and she'll put on some standard icons. Now I'm going to put them roughly where we've got them on the next drawing, but with each of these, we do have each of these anchors has a unique identifier that we've created, and they've got different colors, which mean different things, which we'll see in a minute. So once we're happy with that, let's check that back in again. We can add something a little bit about what we've actually done. Okay, so now this document is ready for use in the field. So now I'm going to jump back into our recorded presentation. This is so that we can we pre-prepared this so that we wouldn't have any issues as we went through it. So hopefully everything will come through to you correctly. You won't hear too much sound. I'll talk over it as we're going through the process, and then we'll have a look at some of the output that we saw. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so here we've downloaded the file. We're checking it out. Sometimes that can be a little bit temperamental, as you saw, as you check it out. But if you hold it and move the mouse while holding it, it actually selects it fairly well. So here I'm navigating around and finding a particular anchor that I'm going to certify. So what I can do is just select the anchor, and it'll obviously hyperlink to it in the markups list. And then from that, I can update the status. So this is status that this is the standard status you see at the top, and we've created some specific ones for us. So one thing to note, if you are using in the field, in the office, you can hide different statuses, but in the field, they all come up. So you just have to be aware that the correct ones are done. So now I've doing the certification. I'm going to go and take a photo of it, and I'll use that photo to attach. Now, as you can see in the field, you see a little photo icon just there, and that's that now is attached to it, and we'll see why that's important in a minute. So once I've scrolled to the correct section, it's actually stayed there on that section. So that makes it a bit easier. So we're going to go through and we'll certify the rest of the equipment. So fairly straightforward for the guys in the field. When they're doing this though, or when someone is using the field, it's worth making sure that you do upload it and save it on a regular basis. We have had occasions where we've got to the end of a large recertification and it's reverted to a local version of the document, and we've had issues then trying to revert back and upload all of that information, which means we have lost information. Now, in this case, I'm going to put this as a pass with comments, and what I'm going to also do is I'll attach some audio to that. So I've got audio button here, microphone button, which will record some audio. We'll have a listen to what some of that audio is in a minute. I don't think that's coming through, so we've got that. I've downloaded that, or not this one, but one of the other bits of audio that I record, so you can hear what comes out when you listen to it in the office. Okay, 2 more pieces to certify. Okay, so this one I failed, and we'll have a look in a minute as to why. And you'll hear the audio that I put on top of it when we go through it next time, when we go through it in the office. I've got one question here. What's the stability of the iPad like? We have had issues in the past. It does depend on the power of the iPad and device. We're looking forward to some updates But I think, Elizabeth, you've had more exposure.
The newer iPads with more memory work fine. It depends on the number of items that we're certifying. If we've got 100 anchors, walkway, ladders, then it does start to groan at the seams at times. We have found that probably 90% of the time, if the app crashes when you restart it, the information is retained and recovered. So we're not generally losing a lot of work. It does happen sometimes with the older iPads, which is why we're looking to phase them out. It also partly depends on the quality of the photos, and that's a bit of a juggling act. If we put low resolution photos in, then they're not fit for purpose, either for the customer or for us, particularly if there's issues and you need to zoom in and have a look at the detail. High resolution photos don't work. The files just get too big and unwieldy, whether it be on the iPad or in the office as well. So we're sitting on using a medium resolution photo, which works most of the time.
Okay, well, it's still going. I've got another question here. Could we use a full version? And on an Android tablet, we haven't explored that, so I can't comment as to whether that would work or not. The video is just finished, so we'll jump back into it in a sec. But there's another question: is it connected to the cloud, and does that help with the iPad space? It is connected to the cloud. But you still require the grunt on the iPad to be able to process it. And as we've checked it out, it's effectively working on our machine, and then we've got to check it back in again. But if it does lose connection with the cloud whilst we've got it checked out, that's where we can lose data, and we've lost data in the past. Okay. So now, in terms of I'm just going to play this bit of audio so I don't have to jump back in and jump back out. This audio, I'll show you where this audio is attached in a minute, but this is the audio of the second fail that I did.
Insufficient fixings and multiple abseil points attached to a single anchor point above what it is specified to be used at. Okay, so that's one way we can attach it. We've also got a comments field that our team can use. So I'm going to stop sharing that for now. And then we'll jump back into what that looks like when we actually, when we get back in the office. So we have check that file back in again. Here it is here. Here's the audio. That's the bit of audio that I just played. There's the photo of the failed anchor. You can also attach multiple photos to a single object. And generally we do, one as a contextual photo and one as a localized detail photo. And you can scroll through them. They're all date and time stamped, and also the certification is date and time stamped, and also stamped against the person who did it. So it gives us a lot more traceability than just a pass of an anchor. So for us, that's fantastic, because we now have that traceability and that ownership of where it's at. So yeah, once again, just these are the photos that we took before. In terms of, obviously, so as we saw before, and a lot of you are aware of the revision history component. So we can see here where I've added the comment in terms of recertification was completed when, what was the major issue identified, and added an additional comment here for the office that may not be immediately visible when you're looking at it remotely, that the layout is now non-compliant for rope access. So we need 2 anchors for rope access in this case, but we've failed one of them. So that's going to be maybe more self-evident when you're standing on site, and not necessarily as immediately obvious when you're looking at it remotely. So we can add these comments in to help the rest of the team. So yeah, so there you go, end to end what we do with the recertification in the field. What Elizabeth then does is she'll then create a report out of this for submitting to the client, and we've got it fully documented for next year. We've got all of our old projects saved in here, so we can look them up. As an example, I've got some different files of examples where we've done, and they've got, as you can see, quite a significant number of photos and all linked, and we can sort of see all the anchors there, and we can so contextual and a detailed photo. I was a bit lucky because I didn't actually check that one, but but there you go. That's an example there. Once again, this one is basically the same image, and then we've cleaned it up for sending to the client, so it doesn't have pictures of photos all over it, but those photos are then generated into a report when we submit to the client. And here's another example in a second. It's a fairly big one, and this one, when it comes up in a second, is based off an architectural drawing, and once again has all of the photos attached to it and linked. So this is something that we might see on a new build. We've put all of our anchors in, and then we want to verify that and submit that as part of our handover documentation to the end client. And then this is once again the same thing, but cleaned up for as part of the report. And finally, the last one, this is one we're about to do. We can overlay to see the coverage of different anchors. We can put clouds where it's an existing anchor that is to be to remain and to be recertified, and where the new ones are going to go and what they're for, and also add any detailed photos. See? Yeah, so we'll wrap it up there. That's a quick 10-cent tour of how we use Bluebeam. And if there's any immediate questions, or if there's some deeper questions, we can go into some more detail in another presentation.
It's pretty excellent use of the software, I reckon. I'd certainly found a lot of interest out of that, and I think it probably relates a bit to some of the site inspection based work that we do as well, Mark and Elizabeth. I was wondering actually, when you were dropping the anchors on when you check out on Studio before you go out there from your tool chest, how's the functionality? I haven't used the iPad myself. How's the functionality if you get out there and you find there's an extra anchor or something, you need to add something on site? Can you access your tool chest, or can you copy and paste things across and then while you're out there?
So yeah, absolutely. The full tool chest is downloaded onto the iPad. Some of those icons work well. Some of the more complex ones for walkway and some of the other symbols we're having some issues with, and we're working through with Bluebeam support trying to get those resolved at the moment. You can see there's a picture that the guys on the iPad can download the tool chest. And we tailor it somewhat. We have extra things that we do for client markups in the office that obviously is not relevant to them, so we only download what's relevant.
Yeah, and so they can add extra anchors, add extra features, and if it's not part of what we've got there, they can add it as a line, and then we'll modify it in the office back to what we want it to look like. We have had limitations, so we can see in this picture that I've got here with guardrail and rigid rail, for instance, those lines, which are, we've generated a specific line to be able to do it, and it's also calibrated on length as well. So the iPad will crash if we try and put those in.
So, I mean, that's on my iPad. The guys in the field won't use that. They'll put in a standard line and then say what it is, and Elizabeth will have to fix it back in the office. That's one of the things we've got a few learnings that we've found that we've submitted back to Bluebeam to try and improve in future versions.
There's one more question there, Lachlan, just around 3D models, but I think that's probably outside what you guys are looking at the moment. It's not necessary for the sort of workflow that you have right now, and probably not going to work on the iPad given the performance issues.
Yeah, you're right. We haven't looked at it from a 3D drawing perspective. We're working on trying to get as much detail and information as possible, but still apply the KISS principle and not try and overload the iPad. We don't need the guys standing around waiting for iPads to boot up and systems to crash and all that sort of stuff. We need them to be able to do their job.
Yeah, it's teams like you guys that need to push back on. Obviously, the focus is on Bluebeam Cloud now, so I'm sure you're already starting to look at that, but it's not quite the same functionality as this at the moment, is it? But this is a pretty old product at the moment, which I think goes back to that comment in the App Store around, whether if they're getting the value of this product. There's a few bugs with it, but it's, you can see on the UI, it's based on the Bluebeam View, which they are phasing out next month. I think Bluebeam View will no longer work with Studio, but this app will still work. So interesting that they're continuing with this app now. Bluebeam, is it Bluebeam 2018 and prior is no longer going to work with Studio after end of this month?
Ben, you're taking away my massive news reel here.
Sorry.
There's actually not much to say.
We've started the comms because there's a lot of people still on 2016, let alone 2017 and 18. That's fantastic. Seems like the only thing holding you back is just performance a little bit.
It was one of the things when I chatted to Mark and Elizabeth earlier in the week. They said, "Do you want to hear about the things that aren't working well for us as well?" And I was like, "Absolutely," because I think that's that's part of this experience of like talking through how we're using Bluebeam is what's working well, what are we finding challenges with. It gives also a bit of an audience to the Bluebeam people in the group as well, but to the other people who are sort of navigating those issues. Ben, I did see that there was a couple of comments in the chat as well directed towards Alex's presentation. Did you? Was there anything specific?
Yeah, I guess that reporting side of things is that you guys are creating a drawing. But is there something else that you have as an example of what you're doing with the markups list, or is that mostly the drawing and you're showing the status if it's compliant or not is the key thing?
So I haven't prepared anything on that. So and we can do another complete thing just looking at the reports that we're generating. But basically, what we're doing is using that the export functionality and creating. We've got some standardized reports that we've finally figured out the configurations that we want. That we export those, and then we join together 2 or 3 different exports and put some headers and header pages and footer pages and make it nice and pretty for the client. So they get full markup, they get pictures of individual anchors if they need them, and they get the status of each of those individual anchors, and then some information about height safety in general.
So you're really just streamlining that data capture and then reporting. That's the key benefit, isn't it?
Yeah.
How does it output the photos when you export that? It creates a little tabular. You can do a tabular view, can't you?
Yeah. So the export that we do, we don't generally export a large high quality photos. They tend to be smaller photos, and they tend to be also quite pixelated in the export.
it's more enough to give the client an idea of what it's about. And if the client's got further issues or need further details, we've got the high resolution photo that we can send them. And so it enables them to sort down to where their issues primarily are, instead of just getting a large report with, I mean, so some roofs might have 100 different anchors and ladders and whatever. So you don't want a small sort of War and Peace coming through as a PDF that is super large. And that's the other thing, is if you're exporting the high quality photos, it really blows out the size of the PDF and makes email and sharing it quite difficult.
Yeah. So you're just relying on the iPad to capture the photos. I mean, that's one downside of the iPad, isn't it? The generally lower resolution. I'm not sure the latest version, they're any better.
Well, even that, we've had to set lower resolution than the high resolution, so that we don't overload the data component.
Yeah, it's all right on a small roof with not too many features, but as you can see, some of our bigger roofs, you'll have 100 anchors, maybe 6 or 8 ladders, a couple of hatches, a bunch of walkway, a whole lot of other things. By the time you get, 150, 200 photos up there, the file starts to become quite unwieldy, even at a medium resolution. So that's something to explore, how we can make that work better, both for us. This is great for the customers. It's also great for us for troubleshooting in the office, and doing quotes on rectifications, etc. We don't have to do further site visits. We can zoom in on the photos and look, oh yeah, I can see what the problem is there, and the guys can include measurements. So it helps us and it helps the clients as well.
And then I think there's also a question that's come through on Teams in terms of the Bluebeam capture being resolution being pretty low. We do have a separate job management system that links into and ties all this in together in part of our software stack. And if there are particular issues, we will take the detailed photos and upload them into a job management system so that we can really zoom in and use the highest quality that we like, or attach a different video or something like that. So yeah, there are some limitations definitely around the quality of photos and the size of the pictures, and we've just got to work with the compromises that we can make so that we can get a good enough product out that meets everyone's requirements. And if we need to dive in deeper, then we've got to work around in terms of putting a high quality photo in our job management system.
It's really good. I actually noticed a couple of that were in the chat just from a little earlier, just directed towards Alex as well. So just with the few minutes that we've got left here, Alex, I saw one from James Danahay, who was saying, can you use the compare tool to compare items listed in a legend?
Yeah, I just wanted to, if James is still around, if we can clarify, do you mean a legend generated from markups on Bluebeam, or like a legend on a drawing?
A legend, yeah. Hi, Alex, and thanks for everyone for their time today. It's really good. Yeah, so when you create your own tool chests, I mean, and so we use it for data points, WAPs, those sorts of things. That we could obviously set up as anchors as well if we want to take pictures of them to confirm that they were there. But yeah, so we go through obviously different revisions of drawings. So for example, if we do a compare them both to make sure that obviously what we're advising should be done, and to compare the two.
Yeah, so I think I haven't actually tested this before, but there's an option in the advanced settings to include markups in your comparison, and I believe that should allow you to compare that. Shanok might be able to comment on it as well. I'm not something I've tested before, but he may have in his work as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and
not too sure.
Yeah, it was just to see if you could compare the actual. So, for example, if I've got 20 WAPs, 150 data points, if we could, you can compare them very quickly to say, all right, there's a difference between the two tool chests of 5 WAPs and 15 data points. It's through the reporting function, I mean.
As long as you select that option to include markups, I think it should, but I have to test it to confirm.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
And any tricks, Alex, for when you get a drawing back that sort of moved on the plan by 100 mil or 200 mil? I know there's the align points function.
Yeah,
but
the align
that
points
the
is probably
sensitivity of the pixels you sort of loosen up a bit as well?
The align points I've found to be pretty effective. It's probably the easiest way. The biggest tip with it as well is just pick corner points of the content so that you know which ones to pick on the second drawing, because it's basically going to ask you it picks it on the first drawing, then you've got to go through and pick the exact same points on the second drawing. I found that to be really effective. I was building a house and compared all the drawings the builder gave me, and they'd always move when they generated them, which was great. So yeah, I found it really effective using that.
Excellent.
You can use the overlay when you find out they have been moved. And if you do it to the right scale, you can see how far it's been moved, and there's an offset button. So if you had, say, 30 drawings and they're all moved a little bit, you can say the default, here's the offset. It's a bit of playing around with, though, but if you've got lots of drawings, it could help.
We've got just a couple minutes left, but I want to take away from...
yeah, I'll give you some little bit of news.
So here it is. It's our opportunity to work out the Bluebeam fact from the Bluebeam fiction straight from the source from Shannock. So,
all right.
What do you got for us, mate?
Well, really, it's really what Ben brought up. At the end of life for Review 19 is coming up on just checking the 28th, and not this coming Wednesday, but Wednesday next week. So if you've got Bluebeam, you can still use it, but if you're using and accessing studio sessions, there'll be no access to studio sessions from 2019 and older. It also is a end of life for support for anyone who's got Bluebeam in 2019 and older. So the important part is if you've got it, you can still use it, just not in a studio session, and just no technical support on that one. And that's an interesting point, Ben, that will tie into VU as well. Something that sort of came up, someone mentioned about using during Mark's presentation, or the safety anchor presentation, that's about using on the Android, but that's only in Bluebeam Cloud. And Mark and I discussed in the past, the functionality is not quite there yet for the custom workflows with statuses. So, I know some point in the future, hopefully it's there, and the level of not security, but the crash issue that you had, and the functionality, access, and all that, and be able to use on your phone and your Android phone as well, which will be there. The other part of the news is, Lachlan, as you did bring up, everyone's taking away my news, the rebranding of MelBUG. The reality is we did start off in the office at AECOM in Melbourne, and we did a couple of these, and then COVID came along, and we thought, oh, well, we'll just do this whole, from home and in the office type thing. And it seems to have come along pretty well. Like, it's nice to catch up with people. We might end up doing like end of year function. We were thinking about that for last year, but just didn't come through. But we might do that this year. But moving forward, we'll keep these presentations on the web. So we've expanded this out to the Australia-wide. So back to Lachlan's original slide about getting other people to be part of this. So it's no longer a Melbourne exclusive thing. So we're definitely interested in people from all around Australia. Really should push into New Zealand as well. That's a long bug name, but yeah, really welcome everyone to join along. All right, that's it from the news.
Thanks, Shan. Yeah, thank you. With being a bit of a push from Bluebeam recently, and they've sent us out a bit of a pack of some merchandise as well. So now I've got our Bluebeam badges and a flag to be able to wave as well. So. Okay, well, look, we haven't fully locked in this next date, but we can sort of expect something in about September. So now's the opportunity, again, as Shannock said, looking for people from other cities and other parts of Australia as well as New Zealand to join our committee, join our group, and help us sort of source some interesting things that are happening in other regions. There'll be a meeting coming up for Q3 at some point there, so we'll start to put out some comms around that once we get it locked in. LinkedIn, is a good source for seeing what we're up to at the moment. I think I probably need to remove this Gmail address. I think we're sort of no longer using that. If you want to contact us, please contact through LinkedIn, or if you are working with Shannock or someone like that, you can go through that path as well. And don't forget our meetings are up on YouTube. There's some really great content there from previous ones, previous speakers as well. I think today was really fantastic presentations. I was very impressed with the ability to be able to juggle all the multimedia there as well from Mark and Elizabeth, and nothing went too awry when it was. Thank you all for joining. We've had sort of over 100 people join the call today, so it's been a really successful hug, and we're hoping to see you all again soon. Of course, a massive thank you to Mark and Elizabeth, and to Alex as well for speaking today. See you later.
Very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.